Hi, I'm Mark Morales, Brand Manager for KT Percussion. Let's take a look at how to adjust the trigger parameters in your KT4 module. First thing you're going to do is hit Utility to get into the trigger parameter. Next thing to do is just simply enter the trigger parameters by hitting Enter. You'll see sensitivity is up. So each pad is already pre-assigned to different sensitivities depending on what kit preset you're on. This kit has the snare drum set to 20. That's a pretty good all-around dynamic range. If you're a hard hitter, you may want to back down the sensitivity a little lower. That means that you'll take a more forceful strike to get to a high dynamic. So you can see the level jumps quite a bit depending on the sensitivity you've set per pad. This really helps you dial in each pad to your playing style. The next parameter is the threshold. Threshold means your soft to loud dynamics can be set to a certain threshold where your soft hits won't come through. They won't trigger when you hit a pad real soft. Why would you want to do that? Maybe with a bass drum, you see it's set to 16. You may want to make sure you don't misfire and hit a real soft bass drum double hit. So this will help you eliminate those double hits on your bass drum. It can happen more with electronic drums because your surface is usually smaller than a big acoustic bass drum. Next parameter is the curve. Now this is really important to help dial in the feel of the pad, the way they respond dynamically to what you're hearing in your headphones or through your speakers. So a normal curve, it's already preset here for the snare drum, means it's going to be a real gradual, soft to loud dynamic level. And this is the most natural dynamic setting. Let me show you. So you can see it rises pretty naturally as I get a little more forceful on the pad. Now you might want to change that for different reasons. Let's say you want to play a real delicate passage in a snare drum. I go to expression 1, and that means my soft dynamics are going to stay soft a little longer. So even though I'm playing different dynamic levels, it all sounds pretty even in the soft range. The next setting is expression 2. Now this means it's going to be even softer for a longer period, even with harder strikes. That's expression 2. Next setting is logarithmic 1. Log 1 means it's going to actually rise much quicker now. So you see the dynamics really jumped on that. Why would you want to use log 1? Well, on tom-toms, it's nice to have consistent strikes where they're not too soft, especially in the mix you want them to cut through. So log 1 allows your dynamic levels to be a narrower field so that your softer hits are going to track louder. And if you need an even narrower field, you can go to log 2. So even soft strikes are pretty loud. This is great for especially metal drumming when you want real consistent fills and you don't need a lot of dynamics within that. The last setting here is loud. Now this loud is really good all-around setting for consistent striking in a track. So now my soft hits are dynamically, they're louder, right? It takes my soft hits and moves them up a little bit. This is good for tracking, so you're real consistent, but it still has a really nice broad range of dynamics. For me, I prefer to leave it at normal so that I can track ghost notes, for instance, like this. So that's why you might want to keep it to normal in the snare drum. The next parameter is re-trigger cancel. Now this is a little different. This is for external triggering on an acoustic drum set. Let's say you want to trigger an acoustic bass drum and the trigger signal that comes into the KT4 may need some sensitivity adjustment. So you just use that right here up and down to dial in that external trigger. The next parameter here is crosstalk. Crosstalk has to do with the pads and how they interact as you're playing a full drum set. If you hit a snare drum and you inadvertently hear a crash cymbal, you can raise the crosstalk on that crash cymbal so that you don't accidentally misfire the crash. So louder players may run into some crosstalk issues from time to time, and that's where you would want to address it here in the trigger parameter menu. Just raise your crosstalk. The next parameter is rim adjustment. This is the sensitivity for each pad rim zone. So if you strike rims really hard, you might want to rack up the rim adjustment to maybe 5, or if you're a softer striker, then you can have a little more sensitivity on the rims. The last parameter here is your foot splash. So this is how easily it tracks your foot splash. It's already preset to 6, which is a pretty good all-around foot splash, but if you're using external software, then you may want to change the foot splash level so that it tracks that as well. And those are the trigger parameters.